Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1323, and today's date is July 4th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Now, before I get started, I just want to make a couple of announcements. I just want to wish everyone a happy Independence Day today, and I also placed a new interview on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So all you need to do is go over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight, it'll bring you to the video, or you can come over to News Sentinel or the X22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, you'll see the video there, and you can play it right on the site, or you can go to Steemit, which is steemit.com, just do /@X22Report, and it will bring you right to the video. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, here in the U.S., we've been looking at many different economic indicators like automobiles, we're looking at housing, we're looking at retail, and what we're seeing is a complete breakdown of the entire system. Now, this is happening in other countries. We see there was an undercover investigation out in Europe where these European auto lenders, well, they're doing the same thing that is happening here in the United States. Just like in the United States, where anyone that has a pulse, they can get a loan for a car, and they've lowered the qualifications for those people getting the loans down below subprime. It doesn't really matter. And we know already that they're changing the credit scores to bring in more people. Now, out in Europe, what we're seeing is that they are saying, listen, no cash up front. You don't even have to have a job, and you can drive off the lot with a car with absolutely nothing. And what's happening is these individuals, well, they can't make the payments, and if they can't make the payments, the cars are automatically repossessed with no questions or anything like that. They just come and they take the car. And the customers, well, they have to pay back hundreds of pounds a month for years. So what we're seeing that is the same thing that is happening here in the United States. It is happening out in Europe. And the reason for this is because the entire global economic system is breaking down. And we can see out in many different areas like Canada, the UK, the housing market is also breaking down. And out in the UK, there are two leading economists, and they're warning of a property crash. They said we are due for a significant correction in housing prices. They're saying we might see something where we might see a 40 to 50% correction in the housing market. Over 1 million mortgages are under threat in the UK. And what we're seeing is that this is not the only place this is happening. We see it out here in the United States. We see it in Canada. We see it out in the UK, like we just discussed. We also see it throughout Europe, in Spain, in Italy, in Greece. Because what is happening here, all this debt, everything that's been pushed into this gigantic illusion of these debt bubbles where everyone thinks everything is fine, well, everything is about to crash. The party is almost over here. And we are seeing a lot of economic indicators that are pointing towards a recession. And from everything that we've discussed and everything that we've been seeing, we are already in a recession. Now, the government right now, the Fed, they're not going to admit to this until much, much later. They're going to go backwards in time and say, oh, by the way, the recession started in the mid-year of 2016. We didn't realize it back then because everything looked fantastic. But when we went back in time, well, then we saw where it really started and how it all unfolded. But we've been tracking this for quite a while. They did this back in 2008, where they went back in time and said, well, it really started way before the crash of the stock market. And this is when it always starts, way before this. Now, Citi, their Citi's sentiment indicator, well, this crashed. And when you look at this, you can see that their surprise index, well, this is also crashed. We are receiving so many economic indicators letting us know that things are rapidly falling apart. And Bank of America is out there saying, well, it looks like from our analysis, the bull market is over. And what we're seeing right now, the stock market is immaterial because the real economy is continually breaking down. There's no stopping it. As we can see, when everyone said, no, retail is going to be fine, housing is strong, we're starting to see cracks everywhere. And these cracks are getting bigger, they're getting larger. And before you know it, the entire system is falling apart, the stock market's coming down, and everyone all of a sudden realizes, hey, wait a minute, we have a problem here. The economy is not doing well. And that's when everyone wakes up. That's when everyone starts getting nervous. This is when corporations say, you know something? This is the signal where we can start letting go a lot of people. We could start to cut everything. We have an excuse. And this is what they've done in the past. And this is what people don't understand. They're going to do it again. And we're going to see waves and mass waves of layoffs that are going to hit each one of these companies. And there's going to be a lot of people out of work. I mean, think about it. From 2008 to the present time, they told us that all these jobs, well, we've been accruing them through retail, through food and service, where there's bartenders, waiters. Well, if we have about 8,000 to 10,000 stores closing, where are all these jobs then? The whole thing doesn't make sense. So who's getting the jobs now? If all these stores are closing, we're seeing them go bankrupt, and everything is shutting down, where are all the jobs? If the restaurant performance index is continually dropping and restaurants are now in trouble, where are the people going to get work? Well, we've run out of places. And this is why we're seeing a collapse of the entire system right now. It's all falling apart. Yes, the corporate media and the Fed, they're pretending that everything is fine. This is all part of the act. They did it prior to 2008. They convinced us that everything was fine until the very, very end. And then, of course, they tried to blame it on the people. It's all those people that took out mortgages. It's all the people that bought homes that weren't really qualified to do this. It's all your fault that this happened. No, it was the government. It was the central bank. It was the way they created the system. The system doesn't work for the people. The system works for them. It takes the wealth and it pushes it up to them. They've been stealing our wealth for a very long time. Now we see North Korea, well, they fired their first ever ICBM missile system. And of course, the corporate media is going crazy over this. And of course, they want us to attack, because remember, the corporate media is part of the deep state. It's the deep state mouthpiece. And they're out there saying, yes, this is the time. We need to act. We need to do something. Well, think about this for a second. They tested a ballistic missile. They've been testing missiles for a very, very long time. Other countries test missiles. Russia, China, Turkey, United States. And do we attack these countries? No. Just because a country tests a missile, it doesn't mean it's time for war. And this missile, and this is coming from the U.S. Pacific Command, confirmed the test and said it was a land-based intermediate range missile that flew for about 37 minutes before splashing down in the Sea of Japan. And we can see right now Trump is out there and he's telling China, telling Japan, telling Russia, we need to talk about this. We need to come together. We need to have dialogue on the situation. But what is happening here is the corporate media is trying to push the agenda of we need to go into North Korea because this missile now can hit Alaska. It can fly and hit other areas, and we are not safe. Well, again, North Korea, for them to attack the United States, it would be a complete disaster. And they know this. They're not going to do it. Actually, Trump was tweeting out there, and he tweeted, North Korea has just launched another missile. Does this guy have anything better to do with his life? Hard to believe that South Korea and Japan will put up with this much longer. Perhaps China will put a heavy move on North Korea and end this nonsense once and for all. Now, he didn't mention war. He didn't mention red line, because what is happening here is they're trying to, behind the scenes, have a dialogue with North Korea. They're talking about peace, about calming the situation down. And we can see during this next meeting, the G20 meeting, we know that Xi Jinping and Putin and Trump and many other leaders, they're going to be talking about North Korea. And we see right now that Putin announced that he would coordinate with Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to promote their plan to work with North Korea. We've agreed to robustly promote our joint initiative to find a solution to the Korean issue, and we have a step-by-step program that we're going to try to implement. Now, we need to understand, why does the deep state want North Korea? Why are they so concerned about North Korea? Well, one, they're selling opium. They're in direct competition with the CIA, the intelligence agencies, not just here in the United States, but around the world. And they don't like competition, because it's competition with them selling opium from Afghanistan and many other places. Also, North Korea is a strategic location to hit China. It would be great to have this area because they can place missiles in North Korea. We also found out that North Korea has an estimated $6 to $10 trillion in minerals beneath its surface. Now, among the 200 minerals buried beneath the mountainous country are iron, gold, magnesite, zinc, copper, limestone, and graphite. What are these minerals used for? Technology, high-tech products like smartphones, computer system, military equipment. And we see there's always another agenda. It's not about their missile systems. It's not about the country itself. It's what they have. And they've been using their missile test system, their nuclear program, to make everyone worried and afraid about what North Korea is doing. Well, they're worried and afraid because once they become a full-fledged nuclear power and they have the ability to place a nuclear weapon on top of their missile system, it makes it very, very difficult to go into to that country and have regime change. This is what they're trying to do, and they're fighting against time right now. Now, we see that out in Syria, the deep state, those terrorist groups within Syria, they're using the propaganda that chlorine gas was used once again in Syria. And Syria has come out and they're saying, and this is coming from the Syrian deputy foreign minister, saying, listen, the United States signed off on it, Russia signed off on it, the UN signed off on it, we had inspections inside of our country. There is no longer any chemical weapons in Syria or any toxic chemical materials or gases that could be used in military operations. Now, Russia came out and they're saying that the Western media, well, they're putting on a chemical show fueled by careful crafted messages that pin the blame on Damascus for the alleged use of chemical weapons. And this is the chlorine gas that's being used in Damascus. Now, of course, the moderate rebels, the terrorist groups, are saying that the Syrian government are using chemical weapons. Now, remember, the terrorist groups are reporting this. When the OPCW went in, they didn't inspect the area. They just believed whatever the terrorist groups told them, and that's what they used to decide what happened in Syria. There was no investigation whatsoever. And Maria Zakharova is out there from Russia saying that the statement produced on behalf of the FSA is nothing more than a testament of the official disinformation campaign which has already been launched against the government, and saying they're pushing this as hard as they possibly can. Now, once again, we are seeing the deep state pushing their agenda very, very hard to convince the world that Syria is using chemical weapons once again. And we see at this point, this is what, the 30th, the 40th time that they tried this. It is not gaining any type of traction whatsoever. Everything always fizzles out because once the experts get in there, once the investigation starts to happen, guess what happens? The propaganda story completely falls apart. It does this every single time, and they only have a small window to push their propaganda, and already it's starting to fall apart. No one is believing this anymore. And you can see this is their last act. They have nothing left. What else do they say? Because what is happening here is the terrorist groups, they are losing ground in Syria. They're obliterated in Iraq. Libya has been pushing them out. And we're starting to see that the Islamic State, this once powerful terrorist group is disappearing now. And this is the paid mercenary army of the intelligence agency. And, the clock is ticking down. They only have a certain amount of time. And you can see that they're trying to push war using the corporate media, trying to make everyone believe that, oh, this is a terrible thing. And they keep going back and forth. Syria, North Korea, Syria, North Korea. And they're trying to push something. They're trying to push the world into war. And on the other side, we see that China, we see Russia, and now Trump with his administration, they're trying to diffuse the situation. They don't want to have war. And this has been proven over time where China and Russia have continually said, let's talk about this. And we can see with Trump now, there are no red lines. There are no absolutes. He wants China. He wants Russia. He wants a dialogue. And we see that this is being pushed now out in North Korea. And we can see that Russia, well, they'll determine the fate of Assad, because the United States mission is just to get the Islamic State, and that's that. And I have a funny feeling that when all is said and done, Trump is going to say, okay, we completed our mission. There's no reason for the United States to be in there. Yes, there are certain rogue individuals that are saying that we're going to stay in Iraq, we're going to stay in Syria, but I think as time goes on, that is going to be questioned, because what we see right now, the deep state, they're losing ground everywhere. The walls are surrounding and closing in on them. Does that mean they are done? No, it means that they might do something, because when all else fails, they resort to false flags. They resort to events. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.